September 15th, 1954. Marilyn Monroe stood on a New York City street corner, her white dress glowing under arc lights, surrounded by 5,000 screaming fans. In exactly 8 minutes, she would have to make a choice. Stand over that subway grate and let her dress blow up in front of the world, or walk away and lose everything she had fought for. Her husband was watching from the crowd, furious. The studio boss had just arrived to cancel the scene, and what happened in the next hour would create the most famous image in Hollywood history, but destroy her marriage forever. Nobody knew it yet, but this single moment would define Marilyn Monroe for the rest of time. The corner of Lexington Avenue and 52nd Street looked like a circus. Giant lights blazed against the September night. Cameras pointed at a simple metal subway grate. Hundreds of crew members rushed around with equipment, and in the middle of all that chaos stood a woman in a white halter dress trying very hard not to cry. Marilyn Monroe was 28 years old. The whole world thought she had everything. Beauty, fame, a husband who was a genuine American hero. But right now, standing in front of thousands of strangers, she had never felt more alone. 3 hours earlier, everything had seemed fine. Back at the hotel, Marilyn had been getting ready for the night's filming. The white dress hung on the closet door. Simple, elegant, nothing fancy. Just a halter top and a pleated skirt that would look beautiful on camera. Her hair and makeup team were scheduled to arrive at 6 o'clock. The scene was supposed to be easy. 7 minutes of film time. Stand over a grate, let the dress blow up a little, laugh, press it down modestly. Done. But then Joe had walked into the room, Joe DiMaggio, the Yankee Clipper, one of the greatest baseball players who ever lived, the man she had married 9 months ago in a ceremony that made headlines around the world. The man who was supposed to love her no matter what. Joe's face was dark. Marilyn knew that look. That was the look that came right before a fight. "Tell me again what you're filming tonight," Joe said. His voice was quiet, too quiet. Marilyn felt her stomach tighten. "It's just a simple scene, honey. I stand over a subway grate and the air blows my dress up a little. It's supposed to be funny." "Funny," Joe repeated. He walked to the window looking out at the New York skyline. "You're going to show your legs to how many people?" "Joe, it's acting. It's what I do." He turned around fast. "No, what you do is embarrass me. What you do is parade around half naked while men stare at you. What you do is forget you're somebody's wife." And there it was. The same argument they'd had a dozen times since the wedding. Joe wanted a wife who stayed home and cooked dinner. Marilyn wanted to be the greatest actress who ever lived. Those two dreams couldn't exist in the same marriage. "I'm going to the set," Joe said, grabbing his jacket. "I want to see exactly what my wife is doing tonight." The door slammed. Marilyn sat on the bed, still in her robe, and wondered how her fairy tale marriage had turned into a nightmare so quickly. But she didn't have time to think about it, because in that moment her phone rang. It was Billy Wilder, the director. "Marilyn, we have a problem. Get to the set early. We need to talk." 45 minutes later, Marilyn arrived at Lexington Avenue. The scene that greeted her was chaos. Thousands of people crowded behind police barriers, news photographers everywhere, street vendors selling hot dogs, kids sitting on their father's shoulders trying to see the famous movie star. This wasn't a film set anymore. This was a public event. Billy Wilder met her at her trailer. He was smoking, which he only did when he was nervous. "Xanax here," he said. Marilyn felt her blood go cold. Daryl Zanuck was the head of 20th Century Fox, the man who owned her contract, the man who could end her career with one phone call. Why is he here? He's supposed to be in Los Angeles. He flew in this afternoon. He wants to cancel the scene. The words hit Marilyn like a punch. What? Why? Billy took a long drag on his cigarette. He says it's too provocative, too sexy. He's worried about the censors, worried about church groups, worried that people will think you're cheap instead of classy. There was that word again. Cheap. That's what they always called women who refused to be invisible. Cheap, easy, loose. It didn't matter how hard Marilyn worked or how many acting classes she took. To men like Zanuck, she would always be just a pretty face showing too much skin. "Where is he?" Marilyn asked. "By his car, waiting for you to decide." "Decide what?" Billy looked at her carefully. "Whether you're going to shoot this scene or not. I can't make you do it. Zanuck can't make you do it. This is your choice, Marilyn. Your body, your career, your decision." Marilyn walked toward Zanuck's car slowly. Her mind was racing. If she didn't do this scene, the movie might fail. Her contract might not get renewed. She might never get another chance to prove she was more than just a blonde with a pretty smile. But if she did the scene, Joe would never forgive her. And maybe she would prove everyone right who said she was nothing but a sex symbol. Darryl Zanuck was leaning against his black Cadillac, smoking a cigar. He was a short man with a thick mustache and cold eyes. He looked at Marilyn the way you might look at a horse you were thinking about buying. Like she was property, like she was his to control. "Miss Monroe," he said. His voice was smooth, dangerous. "I'm sure Billy explained the situation. We can't do this scene, not here. Not with all these people watching. It's not appropriate." "Appropriate for who?" Marilyn asked. Zanuck's eyes narrowed. "For your image, for the studio, for your career." "My career," Marilyn repeated slowly. "The career that you built by putting me in movies where I play the dumb blonde? The career where every role is about how I look instead of how I act? That career." Zanuck's face went hard. "That career is the reason you're standing here instead of still modeling nylon stockings. That career is the reason people know your name. And that career belongs to me until your contract expires." Marilyn felt something inside her snap. For years she had been saying yes. Yes to the sexy roles, yes to the revealing costumes, yes to being photographed and touched and told where to stand and how to smile. She had said yes because she thought that's what it took to become somebody. But standing here, with Zanuck treating her like property, she realized something. Her career didn't belong to him. It belonged to her. And if she walked away from this scene now, she would be saying that she was ashamed of her own body, ashamed of her own power, and she was done being ashamed. "I'm doing the scene," Marilyn said quietly, "exactly as Billy and I planned it." Zanuck's face went purple. "If you do this, I will personally see that you never work in this town again." Marilyn smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who had finally stopped being afraid. "Then I guess you better get comfortable, Mr. Zanuck, because you're about to watch me become more famous than you could ever make me." She turned and walked back toward the set. Behind her, she heard Zanuck slam his car door and drive away into the night. But she didn't look back. She was done looking back. Billy Wilder was waiting by the cameras. When he saw her face, he smiled. "You're doing it?" "I'm doing it." "Good," Billy said, "because I think this is going to be the most important scene you ever film." But there was still one more problem. Joe. Marilyn scanned the crowd and found him easily. He was standing behind the front barrier, his arms crossed, his face like stone. Even from 50 feet away, she could feel his anger. She walked over to him, stepping carefully around cables and equipment. "Joe," she said softly, "please try to understand." "Understand what?" His voice was flat, dead. "Understand that my wife cares more about being famous than about her marriage? That's not fair." "Fair?" Joe's laugh was bitter. "You want to talk about fair? How about this? Every man in America gets to see my wife with her dress up around her waist. Every man gets to whistle and stare and imagine things, but I'm supposed to just smile and be supportive. How is that fair to me? Marilyn reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Joe, this isn't about you. This is about me, about my career, about proving I'm more than what people think I am. You want to prove you're more than a sex symbol, Joe said slowly. By standing over a grate and showing your legs to the whole world? Do you really think that makes sense? I think, Marilyn said, choosing her words carefully, that I get to decide what my body means. Not you, not the studio, not the fans, me. And right now I'm deciding that this scene is art, not shame. Joe looked at her for a long moment. Then I guess you've made your choice, and so have I. He turned and walked away, pushing through the crowd. Marilyn wanted to call after him, wanted to run and stop him, wanted to choose him instead of the scene. But her feet wouldn't move, because she knew that if she gave in now, she would spend the rest of her life giving in. She would disappear into being Mrs. DiMaggio, and Marilyn Monroe would cease to exist. And she had fought too hard to exist to let that happen now. All right, everyone, Billy Wilder called through his megaphone. Let's make some history. The first take was chaos. The crowd was too loud. Someone's flashbulb went off at the wrong time. Marilyn stepped on her mark over the subway grate, but her mind was somewhere else. She was thinking about Joe walking away, thinking about her marriage ending, thinking about the little girl from the foster homes who had dreamed of being loved, and wondering if she would ever find someone who could love Marilyn Monroe and Norma Jean at the same time. Cut! Billy yelled. Marilyn, you look sad. The character is supposed to be delighted. This is exciting for her. Let's try again. They tried again, and again, and again. By the fourth take, Marilyn's feet hurt from the heels. By the sixth take, she could hear men in the crowd shouting things that made her face burn. By the seventh take, she was starting to wonder if Zanuck had been right. Maybe this was a mistake. And then, on the eighth take, something changed. The wind machine roared to life. The white dress exploded upward. And instead of thinking about Joe or Zanuck or the shouting crowd, Marilyn thought about something Billy had said weeks ago during rehearsal. He'd said, "Your character has spent her whole life being invisible. And suddenly, for one moment, everyone sees her, everyone wants her. And it's terrifying and thrilling all at once." Marilyn understood that feeling. She had spent her whole childhood being invisible, being the girl nobody wanted, the girl in the foster homes, the girl whose mother couldn't take care of her, the girl who learned early that beauty was the only power she had. And now, standing over this subway grate with her dress blowing up and thousands of people watching, she wasn't ashamed. She was powerful, she was seen, she was real. The smile that came to her face in that moment wasn't acting. It was pure, genuine joy. The joy of a woman who had finally stopped apologizing for existing. "Cut!" Billy screamed. "That's it! That's the one! Marilyn, that was perfect!" The crowd erupted in applause. Not catcalls now, not whistles, but actual applause. Like they recognized they had just seen something special, something real. Marilyn stood on that subway grate, breathing hard, her heart pounding, and she knew. She knew that this moment, this single moment, would follow her for the rest of her life. This would be the image people remembered, not her dramatic performances, not her comedic timing. This, her standing over a grate in a white dress, smiling. Part of her hated that, but part of her understood it, because this image wasn't about sex. Not really. It was about power, about a woman who refused to be small, about a woman who chose herself. They shot the scene a few more times, but Billy knew the eighth take was the one. By 11 o'clock, they were wrapped. The crowd slowly dispersed. The lights came down. The circus packed up and moved on. Marilyn went back to her hotel alone. Joe's things were gone from their room. He had checked out, left a note on the bed that said simply, I can't watch this anymore. I'm sorry, Jay. She sat on the bed, still in the white dress, and cried. Not because she regretted her choice, but because choices have consequences. And the consequence of choosing herself was losing the man she loved. But here's what Joe never understood. Here's what nobody understood unless they had lived her life. Marilyn Monroe wasn't a mask that Norma Jean put on. Marilyn Monroe was survival. Marilyn Monroe was the creation that had saved a broken girl from disappearing completely. Becoming Marilyn hadn't made Norma Jean disappear. It had given her permission to exist. The scene appeared in the 7-Year Itch 6 months later. It was exactly what Billy Wilder had promised. Funny, sweet, iconic. The image of Marilyn over the subway grate became the most famous photograph of her career. It appeared on magazine covers around the world. It was recreated in countless movies and television shows. A 26-foot statue of Marilyn in that pose now stands in Chicago. But Marilyn herself never watched that scene without remembering what it cost. Every time she saw that image, she remembered standing in an empty hotel room, reading Joe's goodbye note, choosing her career over her marriage. Joe DiMaggio never remarried. He dated other women over the years, but everyone who knew him said he never got over Marilyn. When she died in 1962, 8 years after their divorce, Joe was the one who claimed her body. He was the one who arranged her funeral. He banned Hollywood from attending because he blamed them for her death. And for the next 20 years, until his own death in 1999, he had fresh roses delivered to her grave 3 times a week. He never spoke publicly about their marriage. But those roses said everything. In one of her last interviews, just months before she died, Marilyn was asked if she had any regrets about that famous scene, about choosing her career over her marriage to Joe. She had been quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think we all have to decide who we want to be. And sometimes being that person means we can't have everything we want. I wanted to be Marilyn Monroe. I wanted to be famous and successful and taken seriously, and I wanted to be loved for who I really was. But those two things couldn't exist together. Not in 1954. Maybe not ever." The interviewer asked, "Would you make the same choice again?" Marilyn looked at the camera with those famous eyes, and for just a moment you could see past the makeup and the platinum hair to the scared girl underneath. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I really don't know. Ask me when I'm old." But Marilyn never got old. She died at 36, still beautiful, still famous, still frozen in that moment over the subway grate. The white dress sold at auction in 2011 for $4.6 million. $4.6 million for a piece of fabric, because of what it represented, because of one night in September when a woman chose herself, even though it hurt. That's the real story of the most famous image in Hollywood history. Not just a pretty girl in a pretty dress, but a woman making an impossible choice. A woman deciding that her dreams mattered more than being safe. A woman refusing to disappear. Billy Wilder said years later, "In that 8th take, I didn't capture Marilyn Monroe the actress. I captured Marilyn Monroe the woman. The real woman who existed underneath all the makeup and the publicity. And that's why the image is so powerful. Because for just a moment you can see the truth." The truth was complicated. The truth was that Marilyn paid for her fame with her private happiness. She paid for her iconic status with her marriage. She paid for the world's love with her own loneliness. But she made that payment willingly, because she believed, rightly or wrongly, that being Marilyn Monroe mattered more than being happy. Was she right? That's not for us to judge. That's between Marilyn and the choices she made. What we can say is that her choice gave us something. It gave us an image that has lasted 70 years. It gave us a moment of pure cinematic magic. It gave us a reminder that women have the right to choose themselves even when that choice is hard. On September 15, 1954, on a New York City street corner, Marilyn Monroe stood over a subway grate and let her dress blow up around her. And in that moment, she chose fame over love, career over marriage, herself over safety. The world got an icon. Joe DiMaggio got a broken heart, and Marilyn got exactly what she wanted and everything she feared. That's the price of becoming a legend. That's the cost of refusing to be small. That's what it took for a scared girl from foster homes to become Marilyn Monroe, the most famous woman in the world. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the choices we all have to make between what we want and what we need, subscribe to our channel for more untold stories about the real people behind the legends. Hit that like button and tell us in the comments, if you were Marilyn that night, what would you have chosen? Your marriage or your dream? Sometimes the hardest choices define who we become.